One of the most common questions I get as a certified financial planner that helps people who want to retire early is, where do I actually stand when it comes to early retirement? Like, am I on track? Am I falling behind? Or maybe even overshooting further than I think? Now, I've worked with people at every level, those living on a very frugal budget, those who think they're ready but aren't, and those who have more than enough but still worry. So today I'm going to do my very best to walk you through what I see as the 5 levels of early retirement wealth so you can see maybe where you stand, avoid costly mistakes that I see people making over and over again, and figure out what you need to do to get to the next level. And some of these levels may be surprisingly relevant to your own situation. And here's why I think this is a really valuable exercise. And it's because if you don't know what level you're at, you might be making all the wrong moves or thinking you should be making a level 5 move that maybe doesn't apply to you. Now, I've talked to a lot of people who do everything they can, especially in this category, to save taxes and think they need the fanciest of all tax strategies. You'll hear them quote, like, your CPA doesn't tell you about this, only to realize that they would be paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in fees and add significant risk to their plan with very limited upside. And people often do that because they look at level 5 and think, maybe that's what I need to do. I need to be doing what they're doing. On the other side, I talk with people who are overly cautious and ended up with way more money than they could actually ever spend. And sometimes that means missing out on years of freedom and using the resources that saved. My point is that you don't want to be in either of those situations. And once you understand these levels, you know exactly where you are and what it takes to level up. And it helps you take action that actually matches your real financial position. So we're going to start with level 1. And I call it the frugality zone, the first level of early retirement. This is where early retirement is possible on paper, but often barely. At this stage, your savings are quite minimal. Your portfolio might cover the basics, housing, groceries, but that's about it. There's not really much flexibility, and one surprise medical bill or unexpected home repair could throw everything off. I often find that there's so much of a difference with this level with where you actually reside. For example, one of the cheapest states you can live in is West Virginia. Now, that's going to look very different than somebody who wants to retire early, live in the frugality zone in California, or maybe go to a different country altogether. On top of that, most people at this level, maybe a majority of their money is in a 401k or traditional IRA, where you can't take money out without paying an early withdrawal penalty. Now, I find that people in this zone often underestimate how much they actually need and overestimate their ability to make it work. So what do you do if you're at this level? Maybe this is a great lifestyle for you or not, but first thing to do is reassess your timeline. If retirement is optional right now, giving yourself maybe a few more years. I've noticed a few more years can make a big difference when you're in this frugality zone. Maybe those years let you build a bigger buffer, reduce debt, and that'll increase your confidence. Secondly, this is where you can cut the financial dead weight, right? Going line by line through your spending and what is truly essential. What am I willing to give up? What's holding me back? And oftentimes that might be high interest debt or eliminating that one expense that would make a huge difference and move the needle. And third, of course, is to build your emergency reserve. At this stage, cash is non-negotiable. You need to have a cushion because your plan is very fragile to handle any sort of big surprises. You don't want to be selling from stocks. What if the market's down at that point? At this level, it really does come down to sacrifice and trade-offs. That might mean working longer or maybe repositioning your portfolios so you have greater resilience and closer to that next level. So once you get these pieces in place, you're ready for level 2. Okay, next up, we have the stretch zone. And this one's a little bit tricky. This is where when I talk with folks, retirement feels possible, but maybe it feels stressful. Now, at this stage, you've made significant progress towards an early retirement. There's sort of tension in maintaining your lifestyle. You may have a good sized portfolio and it could cover your cost of living. But when we start factoring in taxes, inflation, healthcare costs, you might find that your income covers a lot more of the essentials and less so of what would make life actually really enjoyable. And when life throws you a curveball, like a $15,000 roof replacement, it can sort of shake your confidence. Now, for example, I was talking with someone the other day. They had enough to retire early and maintain their standard of living, but it was in that stretch zone because they knew they would be finding themselves a little bit worried at times. Like, yes, I do not know I want to retire early, but can they afford to visit family every year or take that out of state, out of country vacation? This is why I say this zone has a little bit more tension. You're really close, but maybe you're not quite there. You might even be retired already, hoping things work out. But I notice I'd say people in this category, there's probably 3 really common mistakes that I see. Number one is locking yourselves into a bare bones budget, thinking that you'll just adjust. Or they retire with no real plan, telling themselves they'll just figure out, and that rarely ends well. So how do you move forward? I'd say the first thing is you clarify spending, not just your current costs, but try your best to do future costs, travel, hobbies, inflation, healthcare. For example, will your mortgage be paid off? Will your costs increase in other areas? Second thing is building a real plan. Now, this is where planning makes or breaks your confidence. I find tax planning can really move the needle and understanding, really can your investments support your lifestyle? With maybe working another year, create that additional margin, or do you need to cut expenses or simply understand them better? Now, I've worked with couples where just one more year or maybe 2 years actually does make a huge difference from a cash flow perspective, from a healthcare perspective, paying off debt. That way, it would free them up just enough to release that tension and make it very enjoyable. The most important thing here is that you're starting to make the shifts, getting close to the next level. And this next level introduces a whole new dynamic that maybe you might have heard of or maybe you haven't. But we're going to talk about this because it's been growing in popularity, especially on Gen X, young boomers, and it's called the coaster. Now, you've likely heard of the FIRE movement, right? Financial independence, retire early. Well, this stage is a little bit of a remix. You're not fully retired, but you're not grinding anymore. You've reached a point where your investments could support you, but you haven't pulled the ripcord yet. Maybe you've chosen to work part-time, taken a lower paying job that aligns more with your passions, or launch a small business that gives you purpose. You stopped the relentless climb and now you're coasting, but you're still pedaling, right? This is someone who's built real wealth. You've done the heavy lifting. Now you can let time and compounding do the rest of the work for you. That said, this level is not without risks. For example, let's say your investments are at a point where they could support your lifestyle each year, but if you're only drawing a small amount and delaying portfolio withdrawals, you could be missing out on some key tax planning windows like Roth conversions while your taxable income was low, or optimizing health subsidies. Or let's say you move to part-time work and lose access to your current healthcare. Now you're facing higher premiums and you're potentially burning through assets faster than you thought. There's a sudden danger here, and that is comfort. I've seen folks get too comfortable in this stage and they don't take that final step. They may have enough on paper to support themselves, but they've not optimized their investments or tax strategy to align with this lifestyle. I've seen both sides of the coin where they are way too risky and this can blow up your plan, or they're holding way too much cash. They're forgetting that we need to make this money grow in order for this to work over the next 30 to 40 years. So what do you do at this level? What do you do to level up? I'd say number one is invest with intention. This isn't the time to overcorrect towards conservative. You still need some growth, but do it wisely and strategically. Second thing is to bridge the income gap. Plan out future withdrawals. Don't just kick the can down the road and say, hey, I'm just going to worry about this in a decade from now, but start to build a plan for the short term as well as what you're going to plan to do in the long term. And the third one is define your next move. Now, whether that's a full retirement, starting a business, or scaling back even more, you don't actually know what this will look like until you actually get there. But retiring to something rather than from something and keeping your purpose is how you avoid losing that and being lost in this stage. And that's something that really isn't talked about enough when it comes to early retirement. So this level can be incredibly fulfilling, but only if you stay engaged. But we're going to talk about this next one, which I think is what most people think when they think of a solid early retirement plan. I call this the stable zone. Now, this is a level where your plan works. You've got the income you need. You've got the flexibility you want. You probably have funded multiple different types of retirement accounts, maybe taxable, Roth, pre-tax, and you're not stressed when the water heater breaks or the market takes a dip. You likely have minimal debt. Maybe you paid off your home, or you have a very low interest rate on that home so it doesn't stress the budget. Maybe you have multiple income streams and you're not dependent on just one financial lever. And that's what makes this stage so powerful. For many people, this is where you sort of start to cross that psychological threshold, the point where you could say, we're good. We don't have to work anymore if we don't want to. But you're not just relying on the back of the napkin math or rules of thumb like the 4% rule. You're operating with an actual plan. That said, this level comes with new questions. At this level, you're likely not going to run out of money, but you can certainly waste a lot of money on taxes and mistakes. Now, questions people at this level are asking are, how much should or can I withdraw from my assets? How do I coordinate withdrawals across multiple different accounts? How do I navigate taxes when my income goes from W-2 to now I'm in retirement? What happens when markets drop? Do I sell, hold, rebalance? And I find that there's really three powerful ways to level up at this stage. And number one is being tax efficient with your withdrawal strategy, right? Coordinating across accounts so you're not overpaying Uncle Sam. Number two is asset location, right? Thinking about where you hold bonds, where you hold stocks, what types of accounts you actually hold those investments. For example, being very intentional with the type of investments you own in like a tax-free account. Are you being strategic in the correlation of your assets? Are they performing slightly differently or the same, right? Really is a time to be more intentional with the asset allocation and asset location of your investments. Third one is health insurance planning, right? And that can have a big impact, especially when it comes to your taxable income. So getting that right could mean the difference between thousands of dollars in tax savings, premium savings. So you've done the hard part. Now it's about preserving freedom, avoiding tax drag, and still sustaining your lifestyle. And then there's the top. This is the stage I call the financial abundance zone. Now, this is a little bit more rare. Now, you've won the game of personal finance, but you're not done playing. At this level, you're not worried about running out of money per se, and the investments sort of start to become maybe more of a supplemental piece, more of the sideshow. The real value is maximizing what you keep, not just what you earn. Now, there's three common themes I see here at this level. Number one is large pre-tax balances, creating a lot of RMD pressure in the future. Number two, capital gains, right? Maybe you've sold a business or you're about to sell a business or you have positions that have significant capital gains and you're trying to be smart about how you actually deal with those going forward. And thirdly, goals around giving, legacy, and long-term impact become even more important. Now, you're probably not stressed about expenses at this point, but taxes become your biggest cost. Now, I was talking with a client in this category, and I told them at other levels, people focus on what they earn, but someone at your level, the biggest opportunity is usually what you keep. So, what separates the good from great in this zone? Number one is advanced tax planning, right? Roth conversions, donor advised funds, charitable remainder trust. This is where strategy can save 6 or 7 figures over time. Number two is estate planning, right? A proper estate planning strategies can save you, 30 to 40% of what it would otherwise go to taxes. Now, investments are a very important part of the puzzle, but 30 to 40% of your wealth saved in proper estate planning is going to be an extremely difficult hurdle rate to beat when it comes to returns on investments. And the third one is purposeful living and legacy. Now, at this point, the question isn't can you retire? It's how do you want to live? That might look like extreme generosity, mentorship, and those three are three pieces that I notice really move the needle most for somebody in the financial abundance zone. So I'm curious, what level are you at? More importantly, maybe what's the next step and gets you to the next level where you are now? Because early retirement, again, isn't just about hitting a magic number. It's about creating the lifestyle, using money as a tool to give you freedom, flexibility, and peace of mind. But if you're in level 4 or in the stable or abundance zone and you aren't sure if you are ready to actually retire early, I'm going to be going through the signs ready to actually take that step. You should definitely check that out by clicking right here. And once again, this is Matt Calcagno, financial advisor here at One Degree Advisors. If you'd like to talk to me or someone on my team about your financial plan, click the link in the description and we'd love to chat with you.